extending our hands in the spirit of reciprocity, the balance of giving and receiving. Sifa Zote Zende Kwa Mumba, which is Swahili for all praise is due to the Creator. And I'd like to open up these videos with giving praise to the Creator in a way that many of us use to say grace over food. A number of the independent black schools have used a variation of the same Swahili prayer. It's real simple, and many use it because it cuts across different religious backgrounds. So with the independent schools, children might be Christian or Muslim or Yoruba or Akan or whatever, and we could just basically say all praise is due to the Creator together, and making some reference with our hands extended to the notion of giving and receiving. And it is hoped that this video will be food for thought. And so as food for thought, saying a grace in the beginning is very good. I want to talk about, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Baba Brother D, B. Amar Nubian, and I'm part of the New Ashe, the New African Social Health Effort. And today's video is to look at some questions that surround being pro-black. Do you see yourself as someone who loves your people? Do you feel like you are able to show other people that you love your people? Are there some conflicts or some contradictions with demonstrating love for our people? I'm not simply pro-black, as I often said. I'm a black nationalist, and I'm a particular type of black nationalist. We call ourselves scientific African nationalists, people who are dedicated to the notion of the systematic acquisition and application of knowledge and skills for the best interest of African people. Now, attempting to be or striving to be scientific, to be logical, I'm realizing that it is not logical to think that I'm going to win people over to being pro-black by logic. Because I didn't become pro-black by logic. I adopted this approach to being logical in relationship to black people's well-being later on. And I have no expectation of talking you into a pro-black perspective. It is highly improbable for an individual to be one who can be won over to such an important sentiment based on some logical argumentation. For the overwhelming majority of us, we already need some inclination. We already need to be predisposed towards an attachment to our people. A predisposition that comes from a combination of your personality and your accumulated experience up to this time. Predisposes a person to being pro-black. And some of our experiences, a lot of our experiences in this country, where we are clearly treated as a subjugated nation. We are clearly highly exploited. We are clearly dominated. We are clearly manipulated and cheated and misused and abused in ways that should make it clear that we are a subjugated nation, a subjugated people. However, we are trained to not think of ourselves as a people. Our training, the kind of training that comes from what you learn in school, the kind of training that comes from what you learn in church, and the kind of training that comes from watching the media, works against your view of yourself as being part of a subjugated people, a people. We've been led to think of our mistreatment in this society as being incidental to our characteristics. Not that you are a subjugated people, but you have characteristics that are different from the dominant people, and so people are mistreating you because of those differences. They follow me around in the store because I'm black. I can't get a cab because I'm black. You wouldn't have did that to somebody if it was a white man. You wouldn't have did that, but you did that to me because I'm black. And on one level, we can say that that's true, but it's misleading. Because our being subjugated is not about our characteristics. Because the history of the society that you live in, if you know something about the history, major subjugation of groups of people of different ethnicities have occurred and continue to occur where there ain't no major difference in characteristics. The English, and we talk about the dominant population in this country being white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, right? Which basically means English, right? Basically a set of people from German origin who invaded the island that's called Great Britain, invaded it and pushed the indigenous population of that land further westward, and now dominates that country that we call the United Kingdom, right? Those English dominated the Irish for 800 years. We be talking about 400 years. Oh, 400 years, this and that. 800 years. And I can't tell them apart. Some of them can tell each other apart, but I can't. The difference in characteristics is not great enough for me to say, oh, well, they're doing that because your features are this or that. It's clear. What the English did to the Irish was done because the Irish were a nation of people, ethnic group that was subjugated by the English for the purposes of exploitation, for the purposes of controlling their land, for the purpose of accumulating wealth at another group of people's expense. Similar, the relationship between the English and the Scottish, the English and the Welsh, the English and the gosh, I'm forgetting their name. Maybe it'll come back to me. Isn't a relationship that exists because of differences in characteristics. When white people in this country were saying things like the only good engine is a dead engine, they wasn't saying that because of some difference in characteristics. They were saying that because they were taking this people's land. And they understood that with people fighting back from having their land taken and from being exploited and being enslaved, people would fight back, and in order to try to protect that theft, they killed them up a whole lot of Indians, the indigenous population in this part of the world. And I understand that as an African person, my relationship is a similar relationship. It's not a relationship based on somebody discriminating against me because they are small-minded and just small-minded people who act racist. No. There's a particular relationship that exists between groups of people by which certain people get rich, certain people accumulate wealth, certain people control land, certain people control labor, and the other people who will give up that labor, who give up that land, and aspects of that group of people's culture materially and psychologically benefits another group of people. So we have this unproductive conception of racism. Now, scientific African nationalists, we don't believe in focusing on racism. And even in not wanting to focus on racism, we're recognizing that the viewpoint that many of us have about racism itself is unproductive. And so over the past few decades, people have made an effort at re-explaining racism based on notions of power. And some people seem to get it, and you hear people talk about, well, black people can't be racist because we don't have the power over white people to control anything. We might not like somebody, but we don't have the power. And that's been a good attempt. But by and large, our population still associates a notion of racism with being discriminated against, and it clouds the real relationship. The real relationship, the standard word for it is colonialism. A term that I prefer over colonialism is national subjugation, the subjugation of nations. Colonialism or national subjugation is political, economic, and cultural imperialist domination. And remember that empire is when you've got a bunch of different people being ruled over by one or some small set of people. That political entity that gets set up is an empire. And it stands to reason that you're not going to be treated anywhere near equal when you are a subject within somebody else's empire. And that empire does a fairly effective job, or the people who run that empire or work for the people who work for the people who run that empire do a fairly effective job of covering over the imperial nature of their relationship to subjugated people. So we actually think it's a case that over time, these small-minded people who don't realize that we are all the same, they'll learn or they'll get pushed to the side, and the society will get better and get better. Meanwhile, African people control less of our own circumstances now than we did coming out of slavery. The power of the Western European, led by the United States, has continued to increase. It gets challenged from time to time. You hear them now, they're worrying about China, right? But meanwhile, to talk about African people find ourselves marginalized, increasingly marginalized. And as a black nationalist, I'm teaching folks, starting with other folks who are pro-black, because if you're not already pro-black, chances are I'm not going to talk you into it. But if you already have those sentiments, if you already have those feelings, and maybe you didn't necessarily know what to do with those feelings, well, maybe some more folks will begin to do the kind of organizing work where we build our own coordinational capacity towards controlling our own circumstances. Now, I want to say some things about what makes it difficult for individuals who already have pro-black inclinations. I'll give an example, somebody that I'm close to who is a staunch Christian, and a job that she held, she was in a position where she was dealing with other people trying to apply for that job. And she indicated that she gives preferential treatment to the black applicants. And I was just messing with her. I'm just having fun. I'm like, that's terrible. How could you do such a thing? Good Christian like you. And you know what her response was? They do it to us. I know a good portion of our people have feelings for our people. As many complaints as you might have, as many things that you might point to, the preponderance of the viewpoint that says the white man's ice is colder, all kinds of stuff that, you know, niggas can't unite, all the stuff that people say, you still have feelings for your own people. It comes out when you root for that black athlete, right? You just turned the TV on. You see the black one, you rooting for him or her. All right? There was a time I read about when Jack Johnson became heavyweight champ. A whole bunch of black folks got hung by white folks in the areas that they lived in because black folks was feeling on top of the world when the brother beat that white boy. Pro-black sentiment. Pro-black sentiment can be seen among young people in a cafeteria, and you find cafeteria largely people who are not black, and a good portion of the black folks wind up sitting at the same table. There's nothing wrong with that. You've been taught that something is wrong with that. You've been taught that to deliberately put your people first is something wrong. Religiously, you've been taught, oh, well, we're all God's children. So you ain't got no business showing no preferential treatment to somebody else because they're your color. Most other ethnic groups don't have that problem because most ethnic groups understand that when you see people who are of the same ethnic group, you expect them to want to stick together. You expect them to want to show each other preferential treatment. We, to show each other preferential treatment, feel like we got to do it on the slide. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do it on the slide. If you need to do it on the slide in order to make it happen, then make it happen. But don't be ashamed of wanting to do stuff for your own people. Now, based on already having an inclination, because I can tell you, me as a child, me coming into adolescence, my political orientation, not that I was well studied, okay, not that I was an activist, not that I knew the deeper meanings of a whole bunch of these terms, but I called myself an integrationist. And I thought, and this is me at age 13 and 14, I thought there was some virtue in some notion that we all got to be together, you know, one happy family. And at the same time, I remember having some race consciousness. I remember feeling funny when I was the only black kid among a group of white kids. I remember that. And that race consciousness predisposed me to accepting revolutionary Pan-African nationalism when I was exposed to it. But I already had a leaning. I already had a predisposition. And I already know that a lot of you listening to this have a predisposition. So we need to get some tools so that this predisposition can go beyond a leaning into the kind of action that will lead our people into the power to control our own circumstances. So here go some other things that have interfered with that inclination towards our own people. One interference that doesn't look like an interference is an incorrect belief that serving our people means helping other black individuals achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve within the status quo. It may represent your love of your own people, but it does very little to actually move your people, help your people go into becoming a powerful people. It does help certain individuals get over. It does help certain individuals do better. But we need the kind of action that moves us as a people. One of the things that interferes with those inclinations is black on black victimization. You come home and people done broke into your house and your TV is missing. You probably ain't saying, damn, I think the Ku Klux Klan was here. No, chances are you saying, niggas took my shit. That's probably what you're saying. And so then that interferes with the feelings to do for black people. Now, I need to pause right there and go back to scientific African nationalism for a moment. Teachings of scientific African nationalism already says that the most dangerous enemy is the internal enemy. And therefore, we don't lose our zeal to serve our people because members of our people do some negative stuff. We'll tell you that it was internal contradictions that got us in this position in the first place. So we don't building our activism along lines of being anti-white or anti-any group of people. We are about what is conducive to the survival and development of African people worldwide, and understand that very often the major culprit, the major obstacle is internal. Plus, I need to point out that my understanding of our cause says that I'm not fighting for black individuals who exist today. I'm fighting for African people who are yet to be born. And so we need to do some stuff to help minimize other black folks breaking into your house, or black folks killing each other, or black folks cheating each other, or black folks doing each other wrong in any kind of way. That's work that we have to do, but that does not get in the way of us loving our own people, because most of our people are not the ones that are here present today on the planet, but our folks, our people in the past tense, our ancestors, and we clearly say that we are our ancestors. We are the present form, and our ancestors are the past form of ourself. And the future, who we need to see to it that we are here in the future after we as individuals are no longer here. That's reminding me of another point, that some people feel a desire to be pro-black but are under the false idea that to work for the good of a larger community is somehow to sacrifice your individual needs. And so people will say things like, I gotta get myself together because you gotta help yourself before you can help anyone else. BS. I'm reminded of something that a brother, friend of mine, and co-founder of what is now called African National Science, he and I were in the student group, National Black Science Students Organization, together. And as he and I were getting to know each other, we came to this view as students. It was like, some people would be like, hey, I ain't got no time to help you because I'm trying to pass the course myself, right? And maybe when I know all of this stuff, maybe I could help somebody else out. And me and this brother was like, no, that's some BS. If I'm getting a C and you're getting a D, I'm gonna work with you at least so that we can both get a C together. And you know what you discover? By doing that, I wind up with a B, because just the process of me helping you was also helping myself. The conflict that you may create, or that people have taught, because people say certain things over and over and people just believe it and never, question it, or you gotta help yourself before you can help anybody else. To really help yourself is a collective act. We need you for the good of the collective to take care of yourself. We don't need you to be sick. We don't need you to be getting evicted from your apartment because you didn't budget your money properly and now you can't pay the rent. We don't need you creating conflicts inside your family, because every time you mess up for you, you messing up for us. One of the strongest things that you can do for us is to learn to properly take care of your individual self. That's a collective act. And further, as we talk about in these films that we want people to come together in small groups, we need you to be tight with other people so that we keep each other from getting sick. We keep each other from doing a whole bunch of nonsensical things that we often do. We need to magnify the process, just like if I got into some silly altercation and you grab me by the arm and say, Brother D, come on, let's go that way. As I'm still continuing to mouth off and you pull me in the other direction, because right at that moment, my emotional state was clouding my judgment, and I needed somebody that's tight with me, who's got my back, to say, uh-oh, he's losing it. Let's get him over here till he calms down. We need that. And at the same time, we need individuals to exercise the kind of individual self-control that you don't create the kinds of circumstances that other folks now gotta get you out. There's no contradiction between taking care of what you really need and working for the good of the collective. As a matter of fact, when we use the word individualism, individualism is not putting individual need ahead of the group, it's putting individual desires ahead of the group, because there's no contradiction between the needs of an individual and the needs of the group. the big contradiction is between the desires of the individual and the needs of the group. But some other things that work against, I already mentioned the religious thing, somebody teaching like somehow it's ungodly, or whatever religion you might subscribe to, that you actually have some preference for your own kind. If there was a fire and your child and somebody else's child was in the fire, nobody would expect you to go and grab the other child first. Nobody would expect that. That's just not reasonable. And if you did some stuff like that, people would be like, the hell is up with you? And if your child survived, they would want to know what the hell is up with you. When we're being reasonable, it's understandable that you put your own first. And I have no shame in it. I am about the well-being of African people first and foremost. And that doesn't mean that I'm against anybody else. I love all people, I really do. And I don't mean to boast, because I love my own first and foremost. Politically, you've got advanced political thinking activists who have an abhorrence to black nationalism. Because if you want to talk in terms of freeing the black nation, maybe they want to say, well, no, don't identify as black, we need to identify as workers. And some will overtly attempt to sabotage anything that's moving on a pro-black way in the direction of black nationalism, black people controlling our own circumstances. All right, because see, if black people are controlling our own circumstances, we may start with that activism and not be having somebody else controlling the organizations that we're in. And some don't want to endorse black nationalism, but they'll feel like they will lose your support or turn you off if they overtly act anti-nationalist, all right? And they will even use black nationalist sentiment to try to draw you in to an agenda that does not put the well-being of African people first. So you come across those viewpoints and the work that people do to further those viewpoints, adopting out and out black point of view may become difficult. I'm just going to return to one point that I've already made and quickly embellish it a little bit. Building our people is not just supporting black folks because those individuals are black. Many of us have the false idea that our salvation has to do with black individuals achieving high positions within the society. If individuals become someone important, if individuals become someone that's rich, if individuals become someone that's influential and they're black, then we're feeling good. And a good portion of our internal enemy comes in the form of people moving up within the society of our external adversaries. We have to assess what people do firmly based on our needs as a people. And it has become so easy, and particularly since the 60s, when the teaching in the 60s became be somebody, right? Being somebody, this is what people were teaching their kids. Be somebody. It's like, I don't care what it is that you do, become somebody. And that was a mistake. a mistake to encourage young people around somebodyness divorced from whether or not they're improving the community that we're a part of. Very often, individuals could actually be destructive to our community, but because they were somebodies, we felt proud of them. That's problematic. I'll choose somebody who has not established themselves in any great way in the larger society, but works for the well-being of African people over any rich, influential, well-known, whatever black person, okay? And when I say doing something for black people, I don't mean coming out and giving out turkeys or misgivings. I don't mean these little symbolic things that make people feel like, oh, this person is down, they care. There's a whole lot of work to be done. So let me just come back to this and close. Whether you've agreed, disagreed, still thinking about, gotta digest, right? The things that I've said on this or any other video. We want you to be tight with other people, small group of people. Be tight. Have folks that got your back. You got their back. And then you can criticize each other. And you can cross-examine each other's ideas. And you can be on each other's case. And you can learn together. And I hope you don't get tired of hearing me say it, but I'm saying it over and over again. I want you to be tight. Doesn't make a difference whether you practice a lifestyle that I don't agree with. Doesn't make a difference to me whether you practice a religion that I don't believe in. Doesn't make a difference to me whether your eating habits. I'm a vegan, all right? Not only am I vegan in terms of what I eat, I'm vegan philosophically. I don't wear animal products, right? You don't find me deliberately killing animal life. And I know most of y'all are not that way. It's not gonna stop me from wanting the best for you. It's not gonna stop me from wanting you to be in a position where your back is covered. And we need more people to connect up. See, because when you connect up, then some of those groups can learn greater discipline, and then when we work with the next group, we can get things done better in the larger community that we've not been able to do thus far. I'm Baba Brother D, B. Ahmad Nubian of the New Ashe, the New African Social Health Effort, and I want to thank you once again for your attention.